A very good morning to you and welcome to Morning Express on this chilly Friday morning. I hope you're faring on well. We're going to take a look at the press review to begin the show, and later on we'll be having celebrity chat. This being a Friday, we easing things up and make things a little bit fun, and Brian Eseli will be the man on that bit. But of course, we'll be keeping you updated on local and international news. My name is Trix Ingado, but starting us off is a press review. Now let's take a look at what's making headlines and what pieces of news have been prioritized by the Kenyan press. And we start off with the Standard. This morning, they're telling us 6 urgent actions to be taken, of course, as COVID-19 patient dies. And that was news that broke yesterday. One of the patients, a 66-year-old man, succumbed to COVID-19. He is said to have traveled from South Africa. Now we're told on the top page of this paper that a man 66 who had traveled from South Africa became the first person to die from the disease. As confirmed, cases rose by 3 to 31. Yesterday they were at 28. Now the World Health Organization recommends 6 measures that should be taken to stem spiral into a grim phase, basically meaning these are measures that need to be taken to ensure that things do not worsen, given that this man did come into contact with a few people, and medics say that his travel history, he's said to have traveled from South Africa a few days ago, was not known to medics until a few days ago. And as we have been told over and over again, people over the ages of 50 or the elderly are more vulnerable to this disease or this virus. So naturally, the first death would be someone in that age bracket, and he was clearly advanced. Now, on to those 6 measures that have been outlined on the top page of the Standard. We're told he arrived in the country on March the 13th from South Africa via Swaziland, and patient had been to the Aga Khan Hospital's casualty wing at least once before to consult a doctor. Now, the 66-year-old man was admitted to the hospital on Sunday, March the 22nd, when his health deteriorated. Now, medics said the man's travel history was not disclosed to them until Sunday. And another bit that we're being told right here is authorities say the body must be disposed within 24 hours to limit contact with other people. Now, the Ministry of Health officials will be in full protective gear, obviously, to handle the body, and health workers who came in contact with the patient have been isolated, and those I would expect include the medics at Aga Khan Hospital. Aside from that, there's a quote here from Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe. He has said, "We have received the sad news of the death of the patient who had tested positive for coronavirus," and the man had arrived in the country, as we have been told in the main section of the top page, that he arrived in the country on the 13th from South Africa via he had come from Swaziland before, or rather via Swaziland. Now, let's take a look at what the Daily Nation is prioritizing this morning. It says curfew nightmare. They're trying to take a look at the practicality of that curfew that will be lasting from 7 p.m. all the way to 5 a.m. Now, to enforce it would be a nightmare, and this is why they say that enforcement riddle. Holding lawbreakers in jail cells would bit the logic. It will be counterintuitive because we're trying to fight a pandemic by ensuring people stay far from each other. So if you are trying to punish people for not adhering to that, law, or rather that directive by the Security Council, how then do you do it? I mean, that will be another nightmare. Now, another logistical headache that they're predicting is that prisons and NYS roped in to help police deal with the national lockdown. Now, clearly, a lot of personnel will be needed to enforce that, and that's why these extra people are being brought into the fold to deal with that particular possible problem or extra work that will be given to law enforcers. Aside from that, retailers' dilemma. Now, we were told the supermarkets will be opened for longer, for 24 hours, but for who is what is being asked here. Supermarkets free to open into the night, but where are the buyers? Because they will be adhering to that curfew that will run between 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. So it might be for no reason, actually, because nobody will be allowed to be roaming around, except for those who are in that bracket bracket of people who will be giving essential services, medics, security personnel, emergency service providers and what have you. Aside from that, commuters many Kenyans will be left stranded as matatu operators keep off the roads after 7 p.m. An understandable, concern, because now that if maybe those who they work for would have to, lower the time within which they would have to leave work in order to keep up with that curfew. So we're having a ripple effect that will be felt, and of course enforcement problems, these teething problems, might have to be looked into as today becomes the first day of that curfew. Aside from that, let's take a look at the bottom part of the Daily Nation. They're telling us about the numbers, which are quite important in this particular times. 31 is the number of people who have tested positive for coronavirus, with 3 more cases confirmed yesterday. Then we have 490, 144 being the number of people who have been found with coronavirus, COVID-19, if you like, globally, with China, Italy, Spain, and the United States leading in the number of confirmed cases. Then we have 118 and 60 global figure for people who have fully recovered from COVID-19 disease. Among them, a Kenyan that has been discharged, and that was announced the day before yesterday. And then last but not least, we have 22,154 being the number of people who have died from the COVID-19 virus. Italy, with over 7,500 fatalities, accounts for the highest number of deaths. Has been said over and again that it is the new epicenter of the disease after Wuhan, China, that managed to fight off the virus and ensure a very significant decrease in new infections. Now, if you take a look right back at the Standard, this morning we're told why coronavirus is claiming more men than women. These are statistics that this is on page 22 of the Standard. These are statistics that have come out lately, and of course they're seeing a disparity in the number of people that have been infected versus the number of people, men versus women. So obviously they're giving us a medical explanation as to why men are more affected than as compared to women. And on page 10 of the Standard, governors protest a 50% salary cut, citing loans and mortgages. Now, not very noble right there, but of course this is in lieu of that announcement that the executive, the president and his deputy, are going to be taking an 80% cut in order to free more monies into the fight against COVID-19. Of course, cabinet secretaries were also affected. 30% of their pay would go to that fight. CASs as well as principal secretaries, they are all going to be giving a sacrifice, if you may call it that, so that those finances can be channeled into the fight against COVID-19 and enabling us bolster our strategies against the virus and possible infections and treatment options and preventative measures. But clearly the governors are not, going to go in that direction. Quoted here on page 10 of the Standard, we support a 30% proposal, but we suggest that the money be channeled to a county kitty, even involve business community in making contributions. This is according to Meru Governor Kiraitu Murungi. After deliberations, county bosses and deputies have agreed to 30% deduction in pay and not 50%. Now, governors have committed to that 30% pay. The article further said the decision was, however, reached after much haggling, with the county bosses roundly rejecting the proposal for a half salary reduction. Yesterday, they rejected the proposal for 50% pay cut for 3 months, citing huge loans, mortgages they are currently servicing. It also emerged that some of the governors have not received their salaries for the last 2 months, even as they resolve to take a 30% pay cut, which is quite interesting right there, given that just indicating that the county governments are not faring on well as far as revenues and the economy goes. As it were, the economy was not doing well, so COVID-19 naturally would make these sort of sacrifices quite necessary, because there is an actual need for more money in the system. And the fact that some governors were not getting their pay just shows that we were not doing quite very well, particularly at the grassroots level. Now let's shift gears to page 4 of the Standard. We're told Kenyans want to break curfew at their own peril. Now, Inspector General Police Hilary Mutyambai has said, "We are prepared well and are now ready. We urge the cooperation from all concerned parties for the sake of our safety." And pictured there, quite necessarily is police officers on patrol, and they're both donning masks. They are at Standard Street in Nairobi, just to show you that they are also putting in place measures or doing things that will help them, take care of themselves as they try and enforce the curfew and other measures like dispersing crowds. And speaking of crowds, when you look at the top page of the Daily Nation, a crowd has been pictured there. We're told, these are people milled around the streets, gamblers yesterday on Landhies Road in Nairobi, ignoring warnings to observe social distancing as coronavirus. And you think they were milling around for something important, but no, it's just gambling. And then we have Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Health, who has said, as we speak, there are consultations going on how our teams are going to handle Kilifi and other areas that are emerging as hotspots. And now they're emerging as hotspots because a number of people were said to have been mingling with crowds at funerals and other gatherings, and this caused infections to come from those areas. And obviously the disease, the virus, has a ripple effect, and therefore this would be a place to watch. The Ministry of Health says that it is on that, and she has urged people at the coast and Kilifi in particular to observe social distancing and self-determination. That means if you feel like you have those, symptoms of a dry cough and fever, then you need to take yourself forward to medics so that you can be assessed and seen, or rather tested, for COVID-19. And as we focus on the coast, the Business Daily this morning is giving us the very latest at the ferry. And guys, it doesn't look good. Public safety is what they're calling it. Now, commuters board the MV Likoni here after they defied orders by security agencies to observe social distancing while on the ferry as part of the campaign. Now, this is something that was said that the handling of the ferry shall be put into security personnel's hands, but clearly it did not work out well the first day after that directive, because according to this article, several people were injured in an altercation that saw police pelted with stones by passengers, and passenger screening machines were vandalized in the melee. So clearly taking us back again to square one, and obviously new things need to be considered as far as the ferry is concerned, because from the picture right here and the various pictures we've seen on the other papers on other days clearly indicate that that ferry, the situation, the crowding is not ideal. But if you have been taking note of the pictures from that area, ferry crossing, is that some of the passengers have been taking things into their hands and using masks or handkerchiefs to cover their faces, which shows a level of knowledge as far as the common mwananchi is concerned, and them feeling the need to go about their business, but at the same time to protect themselves. So it's, I think, a win on that level, but clearly that is not foolproof and not 100%. So more needs to be done to decongest the ferry and obviously such areas. And this, the coast has been, as I've told you earlier, from the nation, is one of the areas that have been termed as a hotspot. So more measures need to be taken. Now, on the top page also of the Daily Nation, Kenya reports first coronavirus death. That man, 66-year-old, is also making it to the top page, the front page of the Daily Nation. We had a win with that recovery that was discharged, but also that is quite a huge loss, just pointing to the fact that the elderly are quite vulnerable as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Aside from that, business has been interfered, and one of the ways that businesses have been interfered with is used cars prices to have gone up as COVID-19 cuts imports. And we're told that dealers warn that weakening shilling and reduced imports from Asia likely to hurt vehicle prices. The cost of second-hand vehicles is likely to jump up to 400,000 per unit, reduced supply as fewer ships dock at the Mombasa port and shillings weakened against the dollar as a result of the coronavirus global market shocks. The combination of weakening shillings against the dollar and reduced supply of imported cars is expected to increase the used car prices by at least 7% from next month. So if you are in the business, or if you are, planning to get yourself one, then that's something you might have to put into consideration as you make your plans. Now, still on COVID-19, page 3 of the Standard tells us doctors' notes on how the virus attacks the body and